But if it does get
So
bad,
you finally have a child, and all of a sudden you go through the whole process and you notice some things are a little off. Then you get the news that your child has some kind of special ed or some kind of disability, and you're not used to it. I've actually had people in their families say that, hey, I never knew, or I've never known of anyone in my family that has a disorder or actually was labeled. So now you have no idea what to do. So as a parent, you want to do the best that you can for your child. And when you really don't have any resources, you don't have anyone to turn to, what's the only thing that you do? You feel alone. And what we're going to do is, for a special edition of Ask Audrey, we're actually going to be looking a little bit more into special ed. And we're going to talk a little bit about dyslexia and all the other things, and maybe some tips that parents can actually take a look at, and some resources that you can do to help you adjust. So I would definitely like to introduce to you Miss Kathy Cousineau. Just want to get it here. Hello, Kathy, and welcome to Ask Audrey. How are you?
hello. I'm wonderful.
We've known each other for years, so
Oh
we're
yeah.
trying to be all posh right now, but we know we're going to cut up in a few minutes.
Oh, that's for
Um,
sure.
but for the first thing, if this is your first time watching, or are you live, just hit hashtag live. If you're watching the replay, hit hashtag replay in order to help with the algorithm. So one thing, Kathy, please introduce yourself to the Ask Audrey family of maybe three people.
So my name is Kathy Cousineau, and I guess starting out, I knew that I wanted to be a teacher from when I was like in the fourth grade. I remember making my brother play school. He had no choice. I was the teacher, and that's all there was to it. So I always wanted to do that. And then I ended up working at a residential school. And I asked the principal what I needed to do to work there. Now, he told me what degree to do to go for it and what school to go to. And I did just that. And so I did that. But for some reason, they wouldn't give me a teaching position, even though I was there over 10 years, like working as like a behavior manager and doing all that. But it was fate. So I just had to go with it. And I ended up working in the public schools in a learning disabilities department. And I so I remember starting out teaching, and I really did not know how to teach reading. So even though I just was in school and learned, but it was learning how to use the teacher's book, not really what to do to teach somebody to read.
Right.
So then I took, it's called Wilson Reading, and I took that almost 30 years ago. And I took it with the person who wrote it and her mom. And so I've been Wilson certified for almost 28 years or so. And what that is, it's a way to teach reading. So when I went to school, it was big into phonics. I mean, big into whole language. So it was supposed to be you look at the word and you're just supposed to know it. And
Right.
that definitely does not work for everybody. So Wilson is a way to teach reading by phonics. And it was wonderful to learn it. And then I ended up being chosen to run the learning disabilities classroom for grades 5 and 6. And what that is it was a classroom that was to prevent outside placement. So the most severely dyslexic students were bussed into me, and I had them, because otherwise outside placement um, is well over $100,000 a student, because
Mm.
between going to those specialized schools and also the transportation. So did that. And then I fell at school. And when I was out, it was just, I figured out I did not want to be in the public schools anymore. It was very political. I mean, I had a trainer in my room like every other week. I also, because of it was very political, the classroom that I had. So I always had advocates in my room and all of that, in just very sticky cases. And I could not say what I professionally felt, like each student needed, because I had to say what the school would allow me to say. And that just went against everything in me. My two boys both have learning disabilities, so I know what it's like to be on both sides of the table, being the mom, being the mama bear, advocating and fighting for her kids, but also being on the other side of being the teacher that writes the IEPs and does the evaluations. So I was very conflicted because a lot of times I really wanted to tell the parents, say this, and then I can answer you. But if you don't say that, I can't answer you. So when it was time to go back to school, I ended up retiring, and I found I was going to do whatever I needed to do to get out of not have to go back. So I was researching how to tutor online, and then it just kept rolling. So I found Joanne, and I ended up taking everything she had learned, because I knew how to teach. I just didn't know how to teach online. And this was before COVID. So it wasn't as easy, because you had to convince people that you could actually do this online. And then I ended up being one of Joanne's coaches. So, and actually that's how we met. And so it just went from there. And so I was tutoring, I was fully booked, and I like the amount of money that I could make was already topped out. So I'm like, well, what else? And I mean, I was back to back to back.
Yeah.
And my kids would send me to bed. Like once I got done, I could barely talk because you have to be on the whole time. So I'd be like, and they're like, just go to bed. So I did. And then somebody said, why don't you start a tutoring agency? I'm like, okay, I don't know how to do that, but figured it out. And now that's what we're doing. So I have 19 tutors that work for me. And
Beautiful.
so we do that, and we specialize working with students that all have dyslexia or some sort of learning disability. We also work with students that are on the spectrum. We have executive functioning coaches. We also we call them parent IEP 504 support coaches, because the special ed process can be a very daunting thing to go through, because sometimes you really have to fight even to get an evaluation. And that's what we do, is we support our parents. It's not that you can come to My Happy Teacher and ask for coaching. It's we have to also be tutoring your child for it. So we're kind of different in that way, because we know the student from working with them also. So it's not just, sometimes when people are advocates, they don't even really know what the student looks like. They don't know them.
Yes.
And so it might not be the same person that's the coach, that's the tutor, but they're able to read our student notes and go into our Google Classroom and see all the work. They also can go into tutoring sessions and do observations. So we have it. We have a really good thing going. That's for sure.
I think so. I think you got everything covered.
We're trying.
Everything covered. I mean, you're like, finally. Yes, because I remember the early stages, and it does. It takes a long time. But at least, like, this is the reason why I do like the whole Ask Audrey and also the two tutors talking and all these things, because I think a lot of parents don't know that there are these resources that is out there. And they just assume that the schools will do everything. Okay, my child's enrolled in your school. Okay, you know my child has an IEP or a 504. For those that don't know what an IEP is the individual educational plan. And just to kind of specialize into what are those things, those resources, those tools that they need to actually do the work that a lot of people think that this is the norm, and just help them to kind of either get to the norm or above the norm, just to either give those kids those resources to make them feel and actually help them understand and to process the information.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of people think that, oh, my child's enrolled into the school will take care of everything. And you hit the nail on the head when it's the parents' role. The parents do play a role. It's not just have the kid
Mm-hmm.
enroll into the schools. Like, you still have a voice, but it's nice to have someone that can speak basically for you or break down the concepts. Because sometimes, like you said, there'll be a situation that I want the parent to say this so I can do this. But if the parents don't know what to say or what
Mm-hmm.
should be going on, they won't know at all, like what to say. So it's great that you have those coaches, because I know for me in my tutoring, I don't know what was going on with last year, but I was using a lot of my old this is what your IEP says. You should be getting extended time on your quizzes, or you should not have this many problems because you're 504 or this plan and that. Do you have this for your resource? You should have like a cue card for this that has all the formulas on there. All those little tricks and ticks and everything that needs to be done. Unless you have someone that advocates for you, they have
Mm-hmm.
no idea. Like, they just think that, oh, all right, my child just needs to work harder. Let me get more worksheets. Stop
No,
with worksheets, people.
exactly.
Please, for the love of anything. Um, but when it comes to all these things that's in play, and I'm just so proud, I love what you're doing. Like, what are some of the things that maybe some of your tutors or that you're seeing with like the different disabilities that's coming through your way?
We're seeing a lot of like second, third, fourth graders that
Mhm.
don't have the basics. So they don't have phonemic awareness skills. They're not able to separate sounds or blend sounds or manipulate them. So, for example, it would be like, so say star, now say it without the s. They can't do
Can't.
that. Or if it was pop, now, no, that's not a good one. Pot, now, now change the t to and they can't do that. They don't have those skills. So we're having to go back even before letters and sounds because we have to make sure that they're solid with those skills before we can teach them to read. Because otherwise, I mean, with Wilson, we tap out words. So if the word was, well, tap, so it'd be app. Before we can do that, they have to be able to manipulate sounds. So we have to go back and do all that stuff. Um,
Mhm.
really having to use a lot of reference materials for them to look at.
Okay.
So like we have notebooks, um, but a lot of second, third, and fourth, fifth graders, that didn't have the basics for reading. And it's it also depends on the district of what they used.
Right.
But we're really seeing a lot at those grade levels for that have dyslexia or having trouble learning to read.
Right.
So,
And also, could the pandemic play a little part into
oh,
that as
definitely.
well?
Yes,
Because
because they didn't
if they're
get those
third grade
skills.
now, yeah, like if they're third grade now, that means they were in first grade, and that's when a lot of the stuff was hitting hard, and that's where you basically are getting some of your sounds. And I know a lot
Oh,
of parents invested in like the DVDs or some of the videos they see on YouTube, but most of the time the kids are kind of like, it's nice noise. Like, oh,
hmm,
look at the features. And it's not so much the structured teaching. And a lot of that was missing, I think. Yeah.
yes,
And especially those transitional years too.
right. Because second and third grade are learning to read. Once you hit fourth grade, it's reading to learn. So if you cannot read by fourth grade,
Yeah.
you're gonna struggle. And then even math gets harder because there's a lot more reading in math.
Yep.
So that
You
gets
know, because
harder for them.
yeah, because they're introducing a lot of the word problems a lot sooner than they used to.
Hmm.
And if you haven't noticed, like it just seems like the whole concept, if I can put the math perspective of it, it's all coming sooner. Like Algebra
Oh,
1, very seldom you will see someone doing Algebra 1 in middle school, like in seventh grade. Now I'm starting to see some kids in sixth grade that's doing
hmm.
Algebra 1. And it's kind of like, wow, all right, so what's happening early on? So but that's like some of the things that to pay attention to. So like what will be like before we get into the nitty of the gritty, like before we get into tips or anything, if you guys are listening, there's a couple people I see you guys are in there, don't be shy. If you do have a question, go ahead and put it in the
Oh,
comments.
definitely.
Not a problem, because that's why we're here. We're all here to learn. We're all here to expand. But and again, if you're watching it live, hashtag live, or if you're watching the replay, hashtag replay. So to kind of get into, because there's going to be some resources that you're going to share. What would be like some tips or some look fors for parents? Because some of them don't really, they'll just say that, oh, my child is just lazy, or okay, reading wasn't a thing in my family, we just like to watch TV. Like what are some like look fors for parents?
Um, a lot of our students, they look at the word and they see the first letter, and then they'll guess. They tend to read the same books over and over because they memorize the words, not that they
Mm,
are able to sound out different words. Um, so those are key. If just rhyming, I mean, that's a whole thing. Um, Spelling, if it's done phonetically, if it's like phone would be FON, because it would be PH does the F, O says O, but then they didn't add the E. Um,
right.
so, but the reading, they'll just labor over it. It's just so hard for them. Um, a lot of the short vowel sounds like eh. Sometimes they'll confuse them. You'll have the some telltale signs are the B and D's if they're reversed, or
Mm,
twos and fives, P's and Q's. Um, those will be reversed when writing or reading. Um, so those are just little signs that if you see it, or if the teacher says something, that then you can push for an evaluation. It depends on your state, because like in Massachusetts, if a parent puts in writing that they want an evaluation, the state has they have 30 school days to do it, but it depends on your state. But because you'll be sitting there and they'll convince you, oh, just let them try it out, or I'm going to bring them to the team, and then we're going to talk about it. The issue is, if the teacher brings up a student to the support team, it would be they come to the team. So it would be like a special ed teacher and just some other teachers, that we would give the teacher some ideas of what they could do to how to help the student. Then they come back in 6 weeks. Then we do that all over again. We find out, how did it go? What happened? Here's some more ideas of what to do. Come back in 6 weeks. Then at the end of that, then we'd go, oh yeah, well now we'll put them in for an evaluation. So that's another, it depends on when the parent signs the paper, and then it's another 30 school days. In a way, a parent can just jump through that. It's just right, they want an evaluation. Right. You can jump all that time. So, but parents don't know that. They're trusting that the school is doing what they think their child needs. And it's not that the teachers are not doing what the student needs. It's just sometimes your hands are tied. Right. And you can't do anything. And that's why I got out. I couldn't do that, because I'd be like, just write a note. Right. Just write a note. Write it. Let me give it to the right person. Then we can give you the paper to sign to do the evaluation. So, yeah, we're coming out with a roadmap to an initial evaluation. That's something that we're writing up now and getting it all done. And then we're also a Dear Teacher letter, which is, we're converted. We have it in Canva now. With some people that might be difficult for them to utilize. And so then we're converting it to Google Docs. And what that is a little blurb that explains about dyslexia. Then like a paragraph about who the student is, what they like, all of that. Then the other side of the paper is the list of accommodations or modifications that the student needs to be successful. The most important ones. Not like you're copying the whole IEP over again, putting it on there. But it's a one-page paper that you're going to give to the teacher at the beginning of the school year. This is my son, or this is my daughter. This is what they need to be successful. This is a little about dyslexia. And this is what they like. This is what they don't like. They might like freeze up for things. It's not that they're trying to be bad. They just freeze. That they need it read to them, something. But it's a one-page paper, because at the beginning of a school year, when you have a teacher that has students that are on IEPs, they're asked to read all the IEPs. Right. Well, an average IEP might be 16 to 17 pages long. And that does not include the evaluations that were done or last year's anything. And they don't even know what the kid looks like at that point.
Exactly.
And I need to see the kid and put it together. So it's not that the teachers are trying not to do what the student needs. They're just overwhelmed in the beginning of the school year. So this Dear Teacher letter has a picture of the student on it. So we're just trying to make it easier for everybody. So that will be coming out.
That's excellent. That's excellent. Because I know, being in the classroom, when we generally get our IEPs is that Thursday when teachers are supposed to come just before school's about to start. And you're just like you said, there's no picture on there. And then I love when they say, okay, we need for you to write the goals for this kid and turn it in on Friday. And I'm like, I don't even know who this kid is, and I'm supposed to write their goals. Why didn't you ask the previous teacher that actually had them for a whole year? Make sure they did that before the school year ended, so we can have like a general, all right, this is a generalization. Then I
Mm-hmm.
can see what they can do, and I can start doing what I need to do. But it just, like, you would think that all this stuff will be so organized and seamless. It's not. Sometimes one school, I didn't get the IEPs until the second week of school, because they said, well,
Right.
we wanted to wait until we knew that that kid was still going to be in the class, because they generally move and change kids schedules around a bit, especially high school. Like, they just do that quite often.
Mm-hmm.
But it just seems like when you think that, oh, the teacher's not good because she doesn't know my child, like, sometimes we don't get that information until later. And then for you to have a resource like yourself will be so tremendous, because you're basically not only helping the child, you're helping the parent, and you're also helping that teacher that you have to read it. Like, you need to read the IEP. You can't ignore it. Don't say, oh, I'll know my students. No, you need to read it. You need to figure out a way to kind of, and I had a tally sheet that I made, of each kid, and like when I provided what service that they need, just kind of highlight, so it's easy for me to kind of say, all right, this child needs extra time. They need proximity, which is hilarious because all of them say teacher proximity. I'm like in the front of the class like this,
Mm-hmm.
because
Mm-hmm.
everybody's like slammed up around me. I'm like, okay, this isn't gonna work. Um, but the mere fact that I actually read their IEPs, I kept in communication with the parents. So when we did have an IEP meeting, I loved when the parents say, I love Miss Codner. She's a great person, but I am always in contact with her. Like, she'll tell me, like, is there something wrong? Something was going, he felt a little off today. And, because you care about the kid. They're not
Mm-hmm.
just there. And I think my problems, especially last year as a tutor, was mostly for the private and the Catholic schools when it came to
Interesting.
sticking with the IEPs. Like, my public schools, they kind of have a good idea. But when it came to the Catholic and the private schools, it was just like
Well,
nightmare.
they
And I'm
don't have
always
to.
in, I know.
They don't have to follow the ed plan because that's actually a public school. It's written by the public schools, and they a lot of times don't even have a special ed department. So
Right.
just like I was talking with one of my tutors today, and military schools, a lot of times they don't have special ed departments. So kids that are on IEPs are floundering. So we're looking to reach out to them to just support them, like, and even homeschooling parents, because in order to teach reading, it can be overwhelming to teach it. But never mind if the student has dyslexia or some sort of learning disability. So what we do is we'll take over the reading instruction. We also provide a Google Classroom where everything is in there. There's If they wanted more assignments, it would be in there. Um, we have links to different subscription sites that you just click a button and it takes them right to it. So we provide a lot more than just the tutoring when they're in front of us. They also
Mhm.
have a whole reference place, and parents can go look at what we were doing, the documentation, the advocates that are working with the students, because we have a lot of students that it's gotten pretty touchy with school districts. So
Mhm.
that's a tough one too. Um,
All right.
but that's what kind of makes us different, is because we have all of that.
Exactly. Exactly. So now let's dig a little deeper on this research. with your latest book. Look at you. Oh, so sweet. Okay, the Signs of
Too
Dyslexia
funny.
and Other Learning Disabilities Guidelines. Please share just a snippet of what this book can do for parents.
So what it is it's given the different, like, it's a checklist book of the different symptoms that it can look like at different ages. And so it goes into the reading part, what it might look like, cannot retain facts and information that does not connect to past experiences. A big thing with students that have dyslexia, their working memory may be weak. And what that is using what they know, like in the moment, and being able to manipulate it. So they have a hard time with that. Um, then so it would start out with 3 and 4 year olds, like at this stage, what does it look like? Then in kindergarten and first grade, what does it look like? Avoids reading, relies heavily on the pictures in a story to read.
So
Has
it's similar
difficulty.
to like practice, like it was like a simulation that you did. I remember like in the
Mhm.
early parts, and you actually welcomed some parents and some students to deal with their simulations. And I'll be truthful, that was eye-opening to
Yeah.
see. And you actually had parents like read sentences, and you're like, this is exactly what a child with dyslexia would see. This is how they see the sentence. And I will never forget that one kid. I can't remember his name, but I just remember him shouting in the background, finally, this is what I'm talking about. This is exactly what I see. And the parent was like, are you serious? She's like, yes. Just to see that child to finally have someone to make that connection, and the
Mhm.
parent to kind of woke up to it. And I know she signed up for the service like right away.
Yeah.
Like not even we didn't even finish. She was like, yes, yes, type it
Yep.
in. Where am I? Here's my email. Because it's like, and I'm really just giving you a moment, but it's like you are speaking to the kids that just didn't know how to advocate for themselves.
Mhm. Mhm.
And
Well, to put
I
people
mean,
in
I
their
think this,
shoes,
yes,
so
God.
that in why we did the dyslexia simulation was so that the parents and the teachers could actually be put into their shoes and understand what it's like. And it is very effective for them to feel, because also what we did at the end was, okay, well, this was your disability, this was difficult for you, what would have made it easier for you? And we came up with the accommodations. So then they kind of related to, okay, well, yeah, that happens, well, yeah, that, so now put it together, see why we do this.
Right.
um but also the sometimes, I mean, some of the poor kids, their letters jump on the page, they literally move. And one of my students was telling me that, I'm like, really, it moves? Yeah. But some of them, it will just blur. I mean, not all kids that have dyslexia
Right.
have that, but that is one form that kids have, or adults have too.
Right.
And so what I've done recently is I did a talk with an author who wrote Dyslexia, a Superpower, or a super, yeah, I'm not sure,
Mhm.
remember which one it was. And it was a picture book written for kids to explain to them that dyslexia was not a bad thing, that it's your superpower, and explaining on how dyslexia is more like, it's just people learn differently, and to accept other people on how they learn, but also this is how they learn, and it's not a bad thing. And then trying to show them, like, um, Tom Cruise and Chatham Tatum and Whoopi Goldberg and Steven Spielberg, all of these people that think out of the box,
Right.
that we feel are brilliant, have dyslexia. So how
Wow.
can it be a bad thing? It's just
Right.
in our schools, they're taught that you're supposed to learn this way. Well,
Right.
it's not that way.
Right.
All kids learn differently. You just have to find what works for them. And
Exactly.
so, but the talk with the mom who wrote the book, it was wonderful, absolutely wonderful. Because she was saying what her daughter was going through and how she felt, and she made it an interactive book. So it's a great book. Dyslexic My
Wow.
Superpower. Or I'll get you the link. Her
Okay.
name
And
is
then
Marnie.
I'll just put it in there.
Yeah, Marnie Hibbert. She's from Australia. The poor lady was
Okay.
up at 2 o'clock in the morning. So, but
Just but this is the things that we do so we can get that information out there. So I
mhm.
mean, like she's willing to provide. And if anything, if you haven't noticed anything about Kathy, Kathy is just this is what Kathy is. Like there's no, oh, she's just putting on a front and she seems like a nice person. Like, no, this is Kathy and she cares about kids. Just any kind of like learning disabilities. And one thing I always say, just because we label them the same disability doesn't mean that they have the same ability. So it's like you really have to treat each and every child basically as their own. Don't treat them like they're siblings. And I know a lot of people make it easy to put people in their own pigeonhole, but everyone has that ability to advance. You just have to present the information differently. Go ahead, Kat.
One thing that you just said that really spoke to me was, so I taught, well, I still teach Wilson Reading. It's a wonderful program. And that's what the school district was having me use, which is wonderful, but it doesn't
Okay.
work for every kid. And so having the freedom in tutoring to be able to pull from other, I mean, I'm trained in so many different methods and different programs and different things that in tutoring, I can pull in what I know the student needs, not the program that I'm being told to use. I'm I'm using everything. And like you said, all students they learn different. You just have to find out what works for them. And so, but with the district, I had no possibility of doing that because I had to teach the program to fidelity.
Right.
And which is great, but the only
Yeah.
thing is Wilson's a wonderful, wonderful program, but it works very slow. So you'll have a kid that can read transatlantic but can't read
Mm,
stone because they don't know the other syllable type. They can't read star. They can't read
okay.
team because they don't know that syllable type. They're solid with what they've been taught, but they don't know the other syllable types. So what I've done is I take the other ones, and because in the beginning of a Wilson lesson, it's like A apple um, ang, fang, ang. It's putting like you say the letters, the keyword, and the sound. But
Okay.
what I've also done, if I've put in, I just in the quick drill, I'll put in AR car R. So I'm trying to give them the tools ahead of time so that when they're in the classroom or they're reading a normal book, not a decodable, that they're able to have something to go back to. So,
All
like
right.
a student, I'll be reading, she's now going in eighth grade, seventh grade, eighth grade, and we'll be reading, and she goes, I don't know that word. And it would be rain, RAIN. I'm like, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
you do. No, I don't. Yes, you do. What does AI say? A. Okay, now what? Oh, rain. See? You do know it. But it's just showing them other things that in the scope of sequence doesn't come where
Right.
they are to they have to be solid in both reading and spelling before they can move on. But with the freedom of tutoring and not having to do fidelity, I can pull in from other things. And
Right.
that's where I love it. And
Right.
a lot of people ask me about online tutoring
Mm-hmm.
compared to in-person tutoring.
Okay.
And I really feel that on I'm a better teacher online compared to in person because all of my resources are at my fingertips.
Fingertips. Yep.
If I needed to pull up a game to support a concept or go on to something else, I'd have to go find it. But
Right.
here, I know I can pull it up like that. The
Right.
student is in their comfort zone. A lot of times they're working on their beds, or I go on vacation with them a lot. I've been to many places. Um, so it's, I just feel online tutoring is better. And especially if they have the headphones with the microphone, they can
Mm-hmm.
be anywhere and I can still hear them. I can hear if their sound is correct. I mean, I I prefer the online tutoring. Everything's right here.
Right.
And we
Right.
have it so that we use a program called Cami, and
Mm-hmm.
the students are able to, I'm able to give them control and they can write on PDFs, they can type. And my students are very, I teach them how to use their assistive technology. And I've always done that, even with my students in the schools, to teach them how to use it to make them as independent as possible. So,
Okay.
but yeah, that's my goal, is to make them independent so that they're able to be successful and do what regular ed kids do.
Right. So
Because of,
one other question before we close up, because I was like, yeah, we're gonna do this for 20 minutes. Yeah, 42 minutes in. Uh, but it's really informative. So, how do you feel about the whole chat GPT or the AI usage, especially like you do English? Like, what are your feelings towards that? Because it sparked what you just said about, giving them the tools and teaching them how to use these resources.
I'm just learning. I'm just starting to learn Chat GPT, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
or any of those
Yeah.
AI type of things. Um,
Mm-hmm.
we've always had the read tos and the speech to text,
Right.
so that was that form. But Chat GPT, I mean, I like it for it's given a lot of ideas,
Mm-hmm.
um, but for within, I mean, you'd have to really be on top of kids and put it into a program to find out if it's AI or how is the grammar, like have them have it read back to them. That was a part of what I used when it read back to them what they wrote. I used that
Mm-hmm.
as an editing tool because they would hear it back. Well, that's not what I said. Well, yeah, that's what you said.
Right.
You just had to read it back to you. So, but yeah, I mean, most of the time I was working with fifth and sixth graders. I mean,
Mhm.
I have worked with high school kids all the way down to 4 year olds. So I can see it could be a tool, but it's going to have to be monitored.
True.
I mean, I can
True.
really see them. Like if you gave them at home tests and asked, like, even just a math problem, like to write out what they did, I mean, that would be easy to put in there and have them have it written out for you. So I don't know. That's going to
But
be tough in the high school level.
yeah, it is. But then I always say they have to know something in order to put it into the AI in order to generate something out. So it's like they have to have some kind of knowledge. So it's not like, oh, the computer's just doing everything. I kind of see it as like a resource because
Mhm,
sometimes you want to say something, but you just don't know how to say it. And then you're like, I just need someone
mhm.
to write this. And then it writes it, and you're like, oh, but then you have to read it to see if it makes sense. So if it makes sense to what you're doing, I can see that how that could be a resource. But
And
I
you
can
want
also
to,
see it on the other end because we've had all these cheat things, especially for math, like photo math. Okay, as I'm pointing that out to everyone and know for you. If you see your kid taking a picture, and this is why a lot of teachers are starting to handwrite their assignments because photo math
Mhm.
doesn't read handwriting. So that's the trick, kids. Just in case you try to slide in there, because I love when you put absolute values in, and we haven't even gotten to absolute values yet in the lesson. So yeah, we know, we know.
Too
But
funny.
but that's where it's like I can see it being useful
Yep.
as like you said, it gives you ideas. It helps you organize your thoughts. It possibly sometimes say exactly what you wanted to say. You're like, that's exactly what I wanted.
Well, for a
Thank
small
you.
business, it's great. Write
Oh,
me
it's
an
fabulous.
write me an email sequence for this. Okay, it's
Oh,
done.
it's done. And then we're
Yeah.
keeping moving so we can have our lives back.
Yep. That's a good
Yeah.
point.
So, one, thank you, Kathy, for being here. So, if you definitely want to get in touch with Kathy, maybe even like get access to her free book, like her latest book, like Signs of Dyslexia and Other Learning Disability Guideline, definitely reach out to her. You can go to her website and you can go to her email. I think I have everything in here. I'll
The
just
email
put
is
all
Kathy
this.
at My Happy Teacher. And yep,
Yes. So
perfect.
Kathy at My Happy Teacher. And then if there's any kind of resources that Kathy has, she actually has a link, and I'm going to put it in the link a little bit later. So you guys can
Mhm.
just click and go right to it during the replay. So at myhappyteacher.com/, free resources. So, here's my thing. Even if you're like, oh, this is really not for me, but I know it could be useful to someone else, pass the word on. Like,
Yes,
you can
please.
share it. That's what we want to do because we want to help as many students as we can. Like I mentioned earlier, it's not really happening in those private and Catholic schools. You can fight because I think a lot of parents now that used to be or grew up in public schools are now sending their kids to private schools, and they're wondering why they're not getting the resources that they need. So now you know, because they don't really have to do it.
But
So
also
go
with
ahead.
private schools, they don't have to be certified.
Nope. So
So,
that's something to kind of think about. And I think a lot of parents probably did not know. I know if I'm going to show this to a lot of my current parents, they're going to be like, I never knew. I'm like, I know. That's why I'm showing it to you. So if anything, a couple announcements for me. If you are interested in online tutoring and you have like say secondary students, you can definitely reach me at my solo to ACG Math Tutoring. If you are a tutor or you're thinking about tutoring and you really want someone to kind of break some of these concepts down, please join my Facebook group, which is From the Classroom to Online Tutoring Virtual Community. Try to save that 5 times fast. You will pass out, but kind of gives you some resources, a place where you can ask questions and everything. And then also tomorrow, because this is my whole podcasting week, So tomorrow at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time on Two Tutors Talking, we'll have the pleasure to talk to Jasmine Mack, who is a math teacher of K through 8. And she's just going to introduce all the things that she does and also some of the look fors for parents as well. And then just be on the lookout. I am actually going to be doing myself a tutoring workshop. So, Busy Beaver,
Cool.
right here. All kinds crazy. But I do it because I like to have people have resources. I want people to feel empowered. I want people to see their greatness. And I'm telling you, I'm not trying to steal teachers out of the classrooms, but at the same time, people, if you're not valuing our teachers, they're just naturally leaving because school's going to be starting soon and you're going to be shocked and surprised to see who is back and who is not back. So, but
Mhm.
for here, we're going to close this up. Hey, 51 minutes, why not? But thank you so much, Kathy, for stopping in. I greatly appreciate it. And please make sure you guys continue being awesome people. And I'll see you guys tomorrow. All right, guys. Bye now.
Bye.